more and more footage is being posted online during the Gamescom event for, you guessed it, Sonic Frontiers, and I definitely think it's causing major discussion around the game, anywhere from reused assets, level design, to controls. But I want to talk about more pressing matters, something that genuinely is capturing my attention and those with a keen eye. It's something that I think we should all be focused on, and I'm going to share this viewpoint to all of you, and hopefully you can see some fantastic things through this lens. What might that be, you're probably wondering? Well, it's the value of aesthetic that Sonic Frontiers brings to the table. What do I mean by this? As someone with a graphic design background, I've taken note of all the footage being presented, and I'm noticing a level of detail SEGA's putting in this game. And to be honest, I think it's a technical marvel, even though it's just an early demo. Let's examine some key features that really help to separate this game from past entries, and how its unique presentation helps to communicate its overarching narrative. Starting with the UI, which is something every game is dictated by in order to create clarity between the player and the medium. Although this UI is using a simplistic approach akin to the minimalist art style, this does not necessarily make it a bad choice. Just like the previous entry, Sonic Forces, where the simplistic UI and menus were used to showcase the various customizations in the game, in Sonic Frontiers we see somewhat of the same approach. But in Sonic Forces, this minimalistic approach, although had a fitting color palette, I'd say wasn't exactly fleshed out enough for it to make sense with the overarching narrative, and in some areas felt out of place or out of touch with what's presented. In Sonic Frontiers, however, much of it has been updated to not only involve red, but cooler tones of blues, purples, and cyans, reminiscent of what we see in Tech Aesthetic, which serves to enhance the narrative of this digital cyberspace plot Sonic Frontiers is going for. Not to mention the way these UI elements are animated in a glitch kind of fashion serves to further communicate this behavior with Sage and the environment around them. And because everything is so simplified, allows for the method of animation to look clean and natural, especially when it comes to the stage complete screen after completing a cyberspace stage. I mean, just look at the way everything just pops in so coherently and smoothly, where all the intricacies of the lines are positioned in a certain way to visually communicate the text, and that deserves a chef's kiss. But anyways, speaking of intricacies, let's talk stage detail. And now, I'm not talking about level design. We need to move past that and look at what SEGA is doing on a technical standpoint. Most of these stages are derived from Sonic's memories, so they're bound to be repeats. So the question becomes, how do we differentiate these levels from past games while creating some form of familiarity? Simple. We take those same assets and change everything else around it. The lighting, the skybox, and the visual effects. It's no surprise that SEGA really worked on the engine to allow for some unique lighting features, especially getting a nice golden hour glow for Green Hill rather than just have it be in daylight. We can also see that Green Hill's in parts faded into the background, as it's a fragmentation being pieced together into a singular hub for Sonic to run on, which to be honest is a better way to convey the white space that was seen in Sonic Generations, which could have been a visual aesthetic that tied into the plot. And the cherry on top are these random line effects that, if you look closely, are kind of like a glitch light stream that can be seen traveling around platforms. A small detail again that enhances the aesthetic of fragmentation. And if you take into account that these light streams in the alleged Radical Highway are technically a glitch with lights due to long exposure with a camera lens, further exemplifying this narrative. You can also see that these lines and effects are built dynamically around the stage, allowing for some things to go upside down, sideways, and if they were to make new stages, would give them the freedom to make some surreal levels Sonic is known for. Which, speaking of dynamics, Sonic Frontiers also has more dynamic scenes. One of the major complaints over the last couple of years is the digression of how animated Sonic used to be in scenes. We've been getting very limited movement in cutscenes when we know Sonic is all about, you know, speed and action. But I think SEGA is finally understanding, maybe it's because of the Sonic movie, that they now have a level of expectation when it comes to Sonic's animation, which means we finally get to see his eyebrows move. But aside from that, what really helps to convey these animations is something that I think is being overlooked. It's the dynamic camera angles that we're getting. Does the animation look a bit unfinished in some scenes? Yes, but it's the way that these scenes are placed that show a much bigger improvement over previous titles, and it's kind of why things seem a bit cinematic. Take this shot for example, where Sonic is tapping his arm. You can see his level of impatience just by his hands alone, or even certain shots leading up to the huge titan he goes after, to later then get tossed single-handedly onto the other side. The entire time the camera is placed in certain ways around the titan to create the impact of Sonic's fall. It's why we can actually feel bad for the guy, even to the point of his facial expressions. Not only that, the way some of these cameras smartly transition in each scene, you can see that they use the same glitch effect to further immerse you into this fragmented narration. This This is the value this aesthetic is bringing, what SEGA is bringing. These nuances is what feeds into the trifecta of gameplay, narrative, and visuals, and to some extent really shows us that SEGA is valuing our time by their ability to learn from previous entries. I'd even go as far to say that this is a more perfected formula of a combination with Sonic Forces' Phantom Ruby and Sonic Generations' White Space. Iizuka is taking notes from these past entries to create value around these key aesthetics, and integrating it into the story rather than having it be a separate entity. Sonic Frontiers' aesthetic is definitely shaping up to be a nice, modern, fresh look for the franchise, and I hope those who are pursuing game development can take a note of. But anyways, subscribe to the channel to keep up with all this momentum. It only takes about 2 seconds for this absolutely free content, and you could always change your mind later. Mr. Bane out.